What's good, gamers? Today we have some big news stories from some big name games in the gaming world. Today we're looking at Silent Hill and Resident Evil news on when those showcases are going to be airing, which is very soon, and also some major updates on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Spider-Man 2. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps a bunch. Let's get to it. So first story we're going to talk about is the Silent Hill showcase. It was reported here from Game Informer that they worded Silent Hill's future will be revealed in a presentation this week. Konami is going to be broadcasting a Silent Hill transmission, and the event airs Wednesday, October 19th, so that's going to be tomorrow if you're watching this on the day that it's released at 2 p.m. Pacific and 5 p.m. Eastern. And in the tweet, it's worth mentioning that they specifically state the latest updates for the Silent Hill series, not necessarily games. And it is mentioned here that they have a Silent Hill movie. It was reported that multiple Silent Hill projects are in development at various studios, and that was a rumor that was recently corroborated by the Silent Hill movie director Christopher Gans. So while that was confirmed that there are several games in development, this presentation or transmission might only be about the reboot, the remake from the Blooper Team creators of the Medium, remaking Silent Hill 2, and maybe the movie itself. We might not get anything new, so just keep your expectations in check. As for whether or not, if it is something new, the question then would be, is it going to be what everyone expects, which is something along the level of Hideo Kojima's canceled Silent Hills project, or PT, that playable trailer that was released. I think everyone would like to have seen that finished, but I don't think that's going to be what they are aiming for if they do release like the next mainline series numbered Silent Hill game. I don't think it's going to be like PT, or at least if it is like PT, it's probably not going to be as good as it would have been if Hideo Kojima's version did come out. So I just keep that in mind. So next we are going to be looking at when to expect the Capcom Resident Evil presentation. This is interesting because this is only a day after the Silent Hill showcase. Capcom is having the Resident Evil showcase on Thursday, and Resident Evil's was actually scheduled beforehand. It was reported in September 16th, so that was kind of more odd for Silent Hill to be announced just one day before, but let's get to the details on the Resident Evil showcase here. On October 20th, that is this Thursday, the showcase will begin at 3 p.m. Pacific time and 6 p.m. Eastern time. It will feature information about Resident Evil Village, the Gold Edition, and Resident Evil 4 Remake. This is also brought to us by Game Informer. And the tweet here specifically states, only featuring Resident Evil Village, the Gold Edition, which has some DLC, and the Resident Evil 4 Remake, which I think is going to be maybe focused around the VR aspect of it. Yeah, I think that's the one that has VR, or maybe not. But they don't mention anything new as far as announcements for the series in general, so this just could be stuff we've already known about, maybe more information on the Mercenaries mode, more in-depth gameplay, but they've shown a good lot through the trailers already. As you can see, here are some screens from the Resident Evil Village DLC, and the Winter's expansion in Resident Evil Village Gold Edition which includes DLC and the base game, will be available October 28th. So they're just probably gearing up, trying to build some hype for that. And of course, Resident Evil 4, I believe, comes out March 24th, 2003, so next year. That's not terribly far away either. this could just be a hype kind of presentation. I wouldn't expect any new major announcements in the mainline Resident Evil franchise, since Village wasn't that far or wasn't that long ago itself. So let's move on to the next story then. We're going to try keeping this brief. So next we're going to be looking at another Game Informer write-up about Mario's plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. They have a review in progress. They're not the only ones. I mainly wanted to point out that a lot of people, a lot of outlets have got their hands on this game and have some first impressions or previews up on their respective websites or channels. Going from the Game Informer write-up, they seem pretty high on it, and here are some of the highlights listed. It's worth noting that this Game Informer writer only has went through about half of the game so far, but he points out that removing the grid and having freedom of movement during the turns instead of the normal grid-based square kind of turn or movement has really given him a sense of freedom, and it's one of the biggest changes in the game, really. This doesn't change the approach or his approach to the turn-based tactics in the game though, and he says controlling heroes he would regularly in third person, it feels a lot better and adds some flexibility in the positioning. From what I've seen, they do have a few moves and interactions with the environment that can be triggered while in that like free roam movement, and that's kind of interesting. It seems like a good step forward for the genre in general. And it's moving on, he's stating equipping these, or they have these things you can equip called Luma Rabbid hybrids, which enhance standard attacks with elemental traits. So that's a good layer of strategy that they've added with that. They have a ton of side quests. Most of them, or a lot of them, are just battles, but there's a few decent environmental puzzles and small mini games that help break up the flow instead of just running through battle after battle. And pretty much they end saying, we'll see if the game continues its upward trajectory, but they're happy with what they've experienced so far in the first half of the game. And I'm pretty sure that's what the sentiment is from all the other previews that I've seen. But again, this is from Game Informer, so go read it. Go check them out and read it more in detail. There's a lot of stuff I skipped. We're going to be moving on now. Okay, so here we're looking at some quotes from the Final Fantasy VII ReBirth directors. They state this one is from Motomu Toriyama, hinting at even bigger divergences from the established storyline. The co-director states, from here on in, the Whispers cannot act to maintain the destined timeline, so fans can look forward to seeing what kind of future awaits them. And that is the Whispers they mention here in the article, but they're essentially something that would pop up whenever there was an attempt to diverge from the main narrative storyline in the original Final Fantasy VII during this remake. And I guess it's a bit of a spoiler, but they're not really going to be a factor in this next one. So with that alone, you can see, or you can infer that a lot of changes can be made to the story. Going on a bit further, the article here from GameSpot.com mentions that some of those changes from ReBirth are massive and will likely see the ramifications in them in ReBirth. I think he means remake. I think he means that some of the changes from remake are massive and will likely see the ramifications in this next game, which is ReBirth. And moving on to another quote here, Final Fantasy VII ReBirth is being designed so that people can enjoy this game whether they know the original game or not. Nomura explained, which is the other co-director. And let's see, that's significant just in the fact that there'll probably be some references, but it doesn't seem like you would have to play the original to enjoy it. What they don't say, you don't have to play remake. So it's going to be a concurrent story. They're still going to want you to play Final Fantasy VII Remake so that you know what's going on with the story in ReBirth. But yeah, that's actually not really a surprise that you wouldn't have to play the original Final Fantasy VII to enjoy a remake of that game or the rebirth of its story. The article continues that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth doesn't have a concrete release date yet, but it's aiming to launch in winter 2023. We knew the series would deviate from the original, but in the last couple of interviews actually that anyone on the game staff has done, they've emphasized the changes that are going to be in this new entry Rebirth. So yeah, I'm guessing there's going to be a lot more changes to the story in Rebirth than there was in the original remake. We're going to be moving on, and we're looking at an update for Spider-Man 2. So Spider-Man 2, this is from Inside Gaming. It's noted that Insomniac says Spider-Man 2 is still releasing in 2023. This is in response to a tweet one user said that they were starting to get worried about Spider-Man 2, and Insomniac then, in response to the tweet, saying, "Don't worry, essentially, we're making good progress and it's still slated for 2023. Showing games takes time, effort, resources, and coordination," they emphasize. And you can see the tweet here. Now, some people might not think that they can get a full action-adventure size game released in this next year, 2023, because it's been not that long since they released the game. It was just 2 years, or it will be 2 years in 2023 since they released Ratchet & Clank: A Rift Apart. But Insomniac as a studio actually has a cadence or a pattern of releasing games no longer than 2 years apart from each other. Not necessarily the same game in the series, but they're known to pump out games without longer than a 2-year gap. So this actually is in line with their pattern of releasing games. And if you're not including Miles Morales, which was released in 2020, so even that would have been 3 years, it will be 5 years since the original Spider-Man 2018 was released. So that is about the time it takes in between full sequels. That's how long that God of War to God of War Ragnarok has taken. So yeah, I definitely believe them when they say that it's still on track to release in 2023, and I can very well see this being maybe a summer release, possibly winter if necessary, but I don't think it'll be as far into the year as you might think. Insomniac is pretty good with releasing games quickly, and I can't wait for Spider-Man. So let us go on to the next topic here. Next, we're going to look at some indications hinted from DLC, or hinted in Elden Ring about some DLC found by modders, namely Lance McDonald. I'm sure he has a YouTube channel or something, so maybe go check him out. And the write-up itself is coming from Video Games Chronicle. But they note here that a hidden area may point to Elden Ring DLC, as found by Lance McDonald by using a mod to go out of bounds. Players have been able to find a complete multiplayer area, which has led many to speculate that it will arrive as part of a DLC soon. And furthermore, there are similar areas that exist elsewhere on the map, with one instance being a large pot guarding it, or guarding a coliseum. There is a small quest for this, but even when you complete it, the coliseum doesn't open, but there's obviously foreshadowing to it, so they're still updating the game also, which definitely leans to them still planning on updating DLC, but it is worth noting here that they haven't announced any DLC as of yet. If we look in another article from Video Games Chronicle, it notes that now it appears the game's latest update has included new map files, assets, and textures associated with the aforementioned area, the Coliseum, further pointing to it being a key location. And yeah, they just go on to mention that no DLC has officially been announced yet. There's one more thing I wanted to point out. There seems to have been some files indicating that ray tracing might be coming to Elden Ring in a future DLC. This also was found out by Lance McDonald, and the write-up itself for this particular information about the ray tracing for Elden Ring is in Inside Gaming. But yeah, I can definitely see them adding some stuff in the next couple of months, or I don't think any DLC that they've released has taken longer than a year. So yeah, they've pretty much released DLC for every one of, well, From Software that is, they've released DLC for every one of their games, except maybe Demon Souls, but that was like the earliest, that was on the PS3 originally. But everything since then I believe has had DLC. Maybe Sekiro, I'm not too familiar, but I would bet money that they're going to release something, especially with how well the game sold. I guess it is worth mentioning, aside from them not announcing anything officially for DLC, in some of their previous games, they do have unused content. It's definitely not something that hasn't been done before, where they kind of test ideas in some of their previous games for their next game, but since it was noted that some new files were added during an update, it definitely points to there being some plans for DLC for Elden Ring in the future. We're going to move on to our last story though. So we have information from Sony on their new DualSense Edge controller releasing in January for $200, and they have a list of everything it comes with. It doesn't look like you can piecemeal the parts together like you can with the Xbox controller, but you get quite a bit for the $200. And Xbox, in response, it looks like, has actually updated their design labs for their controller. And if you were to get everything that comes with the PlayStation Dual Edge on your Xbox Elite 2, I believe it will come out to the same, if not more, depending on if you get like a engraving. You can do some custom engraving more so than on the PlayStation controller on your Xbox. So they have a wider range that you can customize, but in order to order all the extra parts like you get with the PlayStation controller, it would end up costing around $200 anyways, if not a little bit more. But yeah, both of those have been announced. The Xbox controller, I believe you can go on their website and start designing. When I tried, it only allowed me access to their base model, but I don't know if that's because I don't have a account with that website. And then of course the PlayStation controller is coming out, let's see here, January 26th is the date for that. And those are all the stories we have. If you have any comments or feedback about the stories or about the video in general, please leave a comment. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Thanks for watching.